Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today is the best day of the month. It is LMIAY time, where I gave you guys a prompt last month. You answered the call, and today we're gonna get a peek into the minds of those featured. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured, well, First way is through the monthly LMIAY, which next month is already up. If you would like to check it out, maybe consider joining yourself. And the second way is through the feature, where if you're an indie author with a book out or a book that is coming out, submit your first chapter and your cover. They'll be read here on the channel, and hopefully that'll help more readers find your work, because that, getting people to know about your work, is the hardest part about anything. And the third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my works, they are all listed down in the description below through the link tree. And I was recently featured in an anthology that came out just this month, so check that out if you're looking for some possibly spooky stories. Mine's not spooky, but it is pretty cute. I'm just putting that out there. So with that said, let's jump into LMIAY. Last month, I asked you guys to think of a story with the trope of the love triangle, right? We know them. A lot of people hate them because one of those love interests is always a failure from the beginning. You're never supposed to even think he has a chance, but that poor man always thinks that he's got a chance somehow, even when she's thinking of the guy over there. So now that you've got your love triangle in your mind, that trope, I wanted you to write a piece about what happened to that third wheel, the one that got away. What's his story after he is no longer attached to that main character? What is he or she up to? Did their love interest end up hating them in the end? Did they find love somewhere else? Did they become a hero of their own story? That is what I asked you guys to do for me. So let's see where this went. I'm so excited for this prompt. The first story is by our very own whole daddy Mike VanHoose. I see Gabby and Joe every day. It doesn't bother me like it used to. At first it did, seeing them together, but now it's become routine. I get up and make myself breakfast, grab a cup of coffee up for the road, and tell them goodbye for the morning rush. They're home when I get off work. We still share an apartment, but we're no longer a throuple. They made the decision to commit themselves to one another. I respect that. I wish it would have been me and Gabby, or Joe, but I got neither. Joe's parents called again. They're worried about him. He hasn't called them in a week. I can tell that they don't like talking to me anymore, especially after the breakup. I mention this to Joe as I pass him on the way to work. He doesn't answer. Neither does Gabby. They don't speak to me. It's like I live in an apartment with them, but only for convenience. If my name wasn't on the lease, I think they would want me to move out. I'd probably just move out anyway and leave them here. I don't need that kind of baggage with me. It's bad enough living here, knowing that I'll see them every day. Work helps take my mind off the situation at home. I have a few work friends I can hang out with, and even a guy I like to grab a beer with after our day is finished. He's cute and wants to take me out, but I keep turning him down. I like the guy, but I'm not sure if dating is such a good idea right now. I come home to see Gabby and Joe. No changes. I ask them how their days have gone, but they still won't talk to me. Gabby just looks at me with her wide, beautiful eyes, so full of expression. I miss being with her most. We used to laugh and joke all day. We were more like best friends than lovers. Now, she just sits there with Joe, not speaking to me. Joe has such a bland look on his face. It's hard to read. I don't think he's ever truly loved me the way I love him or Gabby. He was never the fun guy of the group. Still, neither speak. Fine, have it your way. I go to the kitchen and grab a cup of noodles. After I microwave my dinner, I take a Diet Coke from the refrigerator. I give myself a quick shower and slink into my bedroom for the night. Although it's only late afternoon, I shut my door and lock myself in for another night with an empty bed. My room is my safe place. Grabbing the TV remote, I tune in to some Grey's Anatomy and kick back for the evening. I can feel my eyes getting heavy, combating the feeling. I put my noodles on the nightstand beside me and look at the clock. 2:17 a.m. I've dozed off and I didn't even move. My noodles are ice cold and untouched. My Diet Coke is warm and unopened. I put the clock back on my nightstand and look at the inoffensive red lights. From somewhere, I can hear my cell phone buzz. Looking at the message screen, it's like trying to read another language. It makes no sense. Hello? I ask. trying not to sound like I've lost the last 8 hours and fighting through a stiff yawn. I hang up almost as soon as the voice starts. It's some random wanting to know about wellness checks and such. The screen on the phone says I have 8 more messages. All of them the same number that just called. Delete, delete, delete. Problem solved. I sleep like a rock. The next morning begins the same. Breakfast, coffee, and a total shunning by Gabby and Joe. As I reach for the door to open it and head off to work, a loud thud from the other side jars me to my core. Hello? Who's there? I ask, in a somewhat shaky voice. Police, ma'am. I crack the door and look through. Small man with a thin gray flat top and hard blue eyes stares back at me. His police badge hangs from his neck on a nylon band. An old jacket and off-the-rack tie speak of cheap living. His bulbous nose is road-mapped with red and purple lines. Permanent grin blossoms have bloomed all along his face. The guy reeks of alcohol. Alyssa Heath? Are you Miss Alyssa Heath? Yes. How can I help you? Ma'am, my name is Sergeant Nicholas Little. May I come in for a minute of your time? I open the door. Ma'am, I have been sent to check up on 2 people who may have been living here. Do you know a Gabriella Meeks and Joseph Donnelly? Of course. They're my roommates. Are they home at the moment? Yes, sir. They're probably still resting. Would you like me to get them for you? I could feel a knotting in my stomach, like I was going to be sick. A wave of nausea overcame me. Sweat began to bead across my forehead. I could feel my face and chest flush. If you would, please, and thank you. May I have a seat? He pointed to the chair in the kitchen. Sure. Make yourself comfortable. The room is just down the hall. I smiled. The little man with the thin gray flat top and bulbous nose did not smile back. Opening the door, I see Gabby and Joe resting as usual. Gabby's always expressive eyes and Joe's blank stare seemed almost alive through the alcohol solution their heads rested in. Airtight lids kept the jars from emitting an odor. I'd reached the nightstand beside the bed. My cup of noodles and Diet Coke still sat there uneaten and unopened. I shout to Sergeant Little as I pick up a small pistol I keep nearby, placing its barrel on my temple. The coolness of the steel against my skin steadies my nerves. My heart is jumping through my chest. It feels like a jackhammer. They're coming, detective. Come on in. Ooh, the rising tension in that story. Mike, very nice. Also took a turn. I could really feel the tension, like, in my chest as I read on in that story. Nice job. I can definitely say I've seen your writing get sharper the more that I've read from you. The next story is by Olivia Friesen. Whoever said time heals all wounds had a broken clock. I don't count the days anymore, not like I used to. How many days have passed since he stood on my porch, one hand in hers, one in his pocket. Instead, I pretend I'm healed and made whole. How I was before I met him, and long before he chose her. How I pretend now, forced to sit opposite them as we sip our iced coffees and imagine it's the only coldness between us. She holds her cup up and loudly swirls her coffee, clashing the cubes together loud enough to get everyone's attention. All eyes shift to her, but his attention shifts to me. Instantly, my blue eyes look for the flecks of green in his hazel ones. He doesn't flinch, but my heart does. Ahem. She clears her throat and stands, the scrape of her chair grating against the loose thread of tolerance I cling to, already nearly shredded. I watch her gently place a manicured hand on his shoulder. Notice the almost imperceivable tensing of his shoulders. Clark and I have an announcement we'd like to make. A giggle escapes from her lips, and her free hand slides up to her stomach. I count now, the number of thundering heartbeats reverberating in my ears. Have I not suffered enough? Gasps go up around me, starting low like a tide and rising to a crest as a wave before crashing over me. Cheers and congratulations, pats on the back and hugs. I am one with my chair, having heard the pause that lingers in the air still. She giggles again, which is fast becoming the most irritating noise. Clark never took his gaze from me, and I flicker my attention back to him. There's a hollowness there, guilt, regret. I want to feel sympathy for him, but all I can find is pain swelling up faster than I can contain it. And she quiets everyone with her diamond ring hand fluttering in the air. We got a blood test done. A dramatic pause, but I can all but guess what she will say next. It's a girl. More commotion from the guests around me. Clark forces a smile on his face, but a dread is building up around him, and therefore around me. She's not done. We've already chosen a name, too. She looks at me, and my stomach flips into a knot, inspired by the very person who set us up. An excited gesture towards me, but a sadistic smile across her face. By set them up, she means stepped back and played the role of a supportive friend when I saw how much she loved him. If only she knew just how much he loved me, how much I loved him. We're naming her Ariel. A pin could drop at the invisible silence, and I would shatter. Clark looks at me, haunted. She looks at me with a look that says she knows it all, knew it all, and won. This is her triumph. I no longer hear anything around me, but somehow, as if suffering from an out-of-body experience, I find I have stood and my mouth is moving, saying all of the right things, hugging all of the right people, avoiding eye contact with him. Without willing myself, I find I now face him as she embraces me in a plastic hug, thinking her nail is the final one in my coffin. But if there will be a coffin soon. I watch him sip the coffee, his lips around the poison straw. He watches me, watching him from my peripheral. And this time, I can force a genuine smile to his pained expression. This isn't the time for tears, but when I watch from the woods as they lay him 6 feet under, maybe I'll permit a solitary tear, trapping his gaze in mine. I wink. That took so many turns, Olivia. I was like, I could see this as the start of something for this character as she goes into the next part of her life. But bro, this is perfect as a little snapshot of what happened after on its own. Oh my gosh. The emotion built into this as it went. Well done. The next story is by Egao Chan called Under and Cover. Spacious room, gentle lighting, comfortable chairs, fragrant coffee, and encouraging messages on the wall. Your experience matters. Love and respect yourself, and the world is cruel. Be kind. This was the meeting room. Brian came to the table with the coffee pots, poured himself a full mug, and fixed his eyes on a row of small plastic toys with 2 red, thin hand-slapped shapes on it. First time, a tall, blonde man with a pair of blue eyes walked by Brian. Philip. His name tag said. Yeah, first time, Brian said. What is this toy? Clappers. Philip picked one up and pushed a button. The 2 hand shapes slapped open and shut, making a brittle clapping sound. When someone shares their experience and you feel for them, or have a similar experience, you can just use this to show support. Do not overuse to break the flow, though. We want everyone to feel comfortable and heard. Thank you. More came in and sat in the chairs, placed in a circle. There were 2 major types, the tall male, pale and handsome types, often in fancy clothes, and the tall female type, sexy, feminine, sometimes red-headed. Welcome. Philip stood up from his chair and opened his arms, revealing a small patch of blood stained on his stomach. Today, we have a new member, Brian. Hello, Brian. Some folks waved at him. Some just used their clappers. Who'd like to share today? Philip looked around. No one answered. Even though some seemed willing, it appeared that the presence of someone new made them slightly reluctant. Brian caught some members examining him from the corners of their eyes, seemingly on alert. He could understand, having had to endure what happened. Looks like everyone's nervous. Philip chuckled. Then let me go first, if you folks don't mind. A few members clapped with their clappers. Well, first of all, through no fault of my own, my family is rich. Philip adjusted his suit, smiling. Few members chuckled. Some raised their clappers to show support. As some of you may know, I'm also dead. Philip's next sentence almost made Brian spit his coffee. And I died at the hands of one of my closest friends. More claps. My friend was getting married to my other friend. So to show my support, I flew them to Japan so that they... Oh no! Ah! Ego! I love this so much already. My friend was getting married to my other friend. So to show my support, I flew them to Japan so that they could get married in a haunted house. It is the bride's dream. She likes those kinds of things. It's kind of weird, I know. Now, our group has a complicated history. I am in no way saying that it's not, and I don't have any part in it. But the thing is, I try, okay? I try to be cool and make things fun and apologize. Brian stayed silent as he listened to the story. In many aspects, this was not one for whom he felt sympathy. He was rich. He had blonde hair and blue eyes. He had relationships with 2 female friends in this group. He was not a likable person by any standard, though he could not shake the feeling that his friends were no better, if not any worse. And then, the groom stabbed me in the abdomen. That's it, Philip shrugged. Many members raised their clappers and murmured to each other. Well, at least the bride came back after they buried me. Philip smiled. But Brian could tell that the experience was not going to stop hurting him anytime soon. He wanted to go over there and give the man a hug. But being constantly reminded of his purpose of being here, he pushed it down. He should talk to this man later. Brian looked around. Many were looking at Philip, but it seemed like they were still less than willing. After thinking for a brief moment, Brian raised his hand. Oh, Brian, thank you. Philip seemed surprised. Oh, Brian, thank you. Philip seemed surprised, then said to the other members, Everyone, as you can tell, this is Brian. He's new. Hi, everyone. I'm Brian. Brian let out a dry laugh. With his purpose and what he heard about this supposed support group in mind, he decided to cut to the chase. I'll be honest. I'm here because I wanted to find someone with similar experiences to me. See, I'm in love. I've never been more in love than this. This earned him some claps. I'm willing to do anything for her, even though her heart's not with me. It's with him, for now. I do know, and I think her heart might not have been with anyone but herself. His voice trembled at the last few words. He did not expect his admission, when spoken out loud, would hit him this hard. Before he could finish, Minnie clapped with him. He looked around, and for the first time in a long while, he saw encouragement. He saw empathy. He saw people willing to listen to what he had to say. I've done horrible things for her, and sometimes I do it on my own volition. Sometimes she asks me for something, and it can't be obtained without someone doing those things, and I did them. I did them because I love her so much. But it also kills me that the stains on my hands would make her think less of me. Many more started clapping for him. A chilling thought struck Brian. He sucked in a whole mouthful of cold air and changed course. I recently heard about someone who scorned her, and she needed him punished. I don't know what he's like. All I know is he's tall, he's handsome in an unthreatening way, but before he could finish, many raised their claps, mostly men, even a few women. All seemed to fit the bill. She humiliated him, and I think he was seriously injured once, but he's recovered, mostly. Brian spoke slowly as he looked around. Hey, Brian, are you looking for someone? Just this moment, the young man with brown eyes and black hair put his clapper down. Yeah, bro. You're being awfully sus right now. A handsome woman with her head of short red hair narrowed her eyes. Wait, did she send you here? To find out who's been talking about her? Brian tried to deny, but the disappointed looks of many in the group made his face burn. The thought of continuing this lie numbed his tongue and lips. Before long, he almost collapsed into a seat. Yes, murmurs and scoffs. Brian felt a sense of shame that he had never felt before. He did not dare look up, though he wanted to, more than anything, at this very moment. Philip cleared his throat. Everyone, let's calm down. It's not exactly new. And don't forget why we're here and why this place was built. Not everyone could shake off the effects of the manipulating power that seeped into them immediately. It's okay. Then, after a short pause, Brian felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Philip. Brian, maybe let's start with the one that you're trying to find. Everyone else here has been here for much longer. What's her name? I can't say. Brian shook his head. There's this magic bind. I see, the red-headed woman asked. Do you know the name of the person that you're looking for? What he's like? I don't know his name. I dare not ask. Brian wiped his eyes. I know that he's kind of handsome. He's kind of timid, not dark. Definitely not dark or brooding. He's supposed to be soft, but maybe somewhat rich. But maybe somewhat rich, but not rule-breaking wealthy. He's had a crush on her since forever, but he's no good for her. He's also into poetry, or photography, or some other kind of slightly but not too dreamy stuff. You gotta be more specific, Philip shrugged. That's half of us here. Egao. First, I love that you used the blackened teeth ghost for some inspiration here. Secondly, I love that Brian is an infiltrator there for the lady. Third, I love that this is just a start. I would read more of this. If you are working on more of this, if you eventually work on more of this, I want to read this story. I love the way you do things. Once I get through the ALA books, you're on my list for at some point the rest of this year, because I have at least 2 of your books. I should get your other book so that I can read some things, because I love I just love it. The next story is by Mana Might Write. I found out who he is. The squeak of faux leather pierced the meeting room as the young man lowered himself into the chair. The boy she keeps rejecting me for. A balding man in a turtleneck smiled from his clipboard. Thank you for sharing. How do you feel about this discovery? Take your time. The young man rubbed at the back of his neck, a pained grimace stretching across his cheeks. What was he supposed to feel? Closure, relief, happy for her? If he could select the answer, bluff his way through the session, he could leave early. Maybe find a nice rooftop and watch the city from afar with the girl of his dreams. The girl who didn't want him. Well, it wasn't that she didn't want him. It was just, you seem conflicted. Pencil scuffed against the paper. Of course I'm conflicted. The chance to mask his way through the meeting fluttered out of the cracked window, leaving the single option in its stead. Honesty. And why is that, if you don't mind me asking? The older man's voice was calm, gentle. The patient smile never once fell from his face. Nothing about his presence demanded answers. Because I know that she would love me if she just got to know me. He slapped his gloved palm against his thigh. But, no. He didn't demand answers. He coaxed them out, little by little, until they were laid on the table, paired with a heap of discarded tissues. But I can't compete with this rival. He slumped forward, elbows on his knees and his head in his hands. Is it that you can't compete? The older man stroked his chin. Or perhaps you don't want to. I can't, Laurent, the boy groaned. Trust me, I want to. Let's just say that I have reasons to dislike the other guy. Laurent raised a brow. Reasons beyond her interest in him. I'm not that shallow, he huffed, folding his arms with a crick of stiff PVC. If Laurent were perturbed by the minor outburst, he'd kept it well concealed. So, tell me about the other young gentleman. What's there to say? He's perfect, polite, well-presented, charming, sweet, sensitive, not to mention rich. He let out a bitter half-laugh. He doesn't make puns or impulsive decisions. He does as he's told. He's a model young man in every respect. To put it simply, he's all the things that I'm not. Laurent lowered his clipboard. Are you saying that you wish you were more like him? No! The boy gave his head an insistent shake, blonde locks fanning around him. God, no. I can't think of anything worse. Which is exactly where the problem lies, Laurent. She fell for the wrong mask. In spite of his carefully maintained affect, the therapist looked perplexed. I'm not sure I follow. He raked his fingers over the mask that she should have fallen for. I can't compete with a rival because I am the rival. Do you mean to say that you accept her I mean exactly what I said. Words gushed out of the fountain of exasperation. He is me. She fell for my civilian form. Gradual realization settled upon Laurent's features. She's fallen for the real you. The real me? He flung his arms along his form-fitting black suit. This is the real me. Who I am on the inside. She spends every day saving the city alongside my truest form, yet she's rejected me in favor of the husk of a person my father insists on parading around the world. I see. Laurent flipped to a new page, frantically scrawling. The boy regretted the admission already. So much for his leaving early. He handed Laurent at least 6 sessions of unresolved trauma on a silver platter. At this rate, he'd be lucky if he got to leave it all. Not that it would make a difference. No amount of therapy could alter his reality. No amount of scribbled notes or teased out emotions could change the cards that he'd dealt with. Cards he should have left buried beneath a cheesy grin or a pleasant smile, persona depending. Hot tears clung to his dark textile, shrouding his face. If she prefers the mask that obscures my personality to the mask that allows me to express it, she doesn't love me at all, does she? Even Lawrence's eyes crinkled with pity. Perhaps if she was able to see you both as one and the same, she'd accept you as a whole. Yeah, he sniffed, swiping the damp cheeks with the back of his wrist. Screw the fate of the world, huh, Lawrence? I'll just reveal my identity on the off chance that the girl of my dreams might accept the fact that the boy of her dreams is also the boy of her nightmares. I'm glad that we had this talk. What an interesting approach to the conundrum of the love triangle being two of the same person, but just the alter ego. That's like Mary Jane having a thing for Spider-Man, but not knowing that it's Tobey Maguire. Very nice and very creative. That's always my favorite thing with the LMIAY is you guys all take the same idea and go in such way different directions. It's so glorious. The last story is by KawaiiGroovycat, The Dork. I say that with love. For context, this third wheel is from a webcomic, Cheese and the Trap, and absolutely the guy that the main character should have ended up with because the actual endgame pairing is beyond toxic and manipulative. Raise your hand if you have seen that, been there. Okay. It had been months since the last time Inho had seen Seol, and he hadn't expected anything else. He had stopped going to find her, and she hadn't gone looking for him. That was exactly what was supposed to happen. Seol had chosen someone else, and Inho could even admit, when he really wanted to be down on himself, that she had never really considered him. It was what it was. They had made their choices. She had chosen to be with someone else, and he had chosen to spare himself from having to see her happy with someone else, someone he hated. But that was fine. Everything had ended exactly the way that it had started, with him on the outside, alone, like always. It was nothing new, really. Whenever Inho wasn't at work, he was usually either at home or bailing his sister out of whatever trouble she'd found herself neck deep in that week. He hadn't seen a strange number on his phone screen in a while. Very occasionally, he'd actually got off his ass and finally went to physio to unfuck his hand. On his way, he'd passed by a music store and the gaze at a piano through the window, his fingers twitching with a sense of longing. That was just another thing that he lost to Seol's prick of a boyfriend. But whatever, maybe one day he'd regain the ability that he'd lost. Overall, he was just getting on with his life. He wasn't thinking about what she was doing or whether she was happy or if she ever thought about him. Because she didn't. That fact hurt in a dull, familiar way. But that was nothing new. If asked, he would say that he was fine. Of course he missed having her around, but being her friend or whatever version of that they were doing also hurt. So this was probably better in the long run. Whatever. He was fine. It really was better to get on with life. Better to ignore the glimpse of familiar orange hair that looked more like dog fur than actual human hair. He'd seen it out of the corner of his eye, but just as quickly as he'd seen it, it had passed. Nothing new. Really. This feels therapeutic. I don't know this couple because I don't know the Cheese and the Trap. This is the third wheel from the comic. I hope he gets a better life. I hope he gets the life that you see for him. Because I have read way too many stories with the love triangle where the good guy gets just shit on and gets the worst end of the stick because he's not endgame, so he's just there to be a punching bag, or he's just there to be disgraced, and he deserves better. Well, those are the stories this month. Thank you, everybody, for submitting who was featured. And thank you, everybody, for submitting generally. I hope this was therapeutic. I hope this was fun. And if you've read a story recently that had a love triangle in it where one of them was absolutely disgraced, name and shame. Name and shame in the chat, in the comments if you would like. Otherwise, let me know what your favorite story this month was, and maybe consider submitting next month. The prompt is already up. And until next time, have a great week. And don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Way. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?